Last time we left off about halfway into chapter 6. So this is to vaguely recap Job's first response to the first speech of one of the friends. And as we go through the speech cycles, it'll become more and more complicated. I'm trying to tell you where exactly you are, but this is Job's initial response to his friends. And what we covered last time basically was Job reiterating his bitterness of soul from chapter 3 in the early bits of his current speech now. And then he's also hinting at how friends have been quite unhelpful in their response to him at this point in time, because Job has been seeking comfort in his affliction, but they've basically been setting a moral standard for him to follow instead. So rather than giving him something comforting, they are demanding things of him in which there is no comfort, really. Um, when we eventually get to chapter 8, we'll see just how severe some of the friends can be with this general idea of in order to receive good, you have to be good. But for right now, at least, Job is speaking against the friend's misunderstanding of his situation. So he's letting an outcry of pain escape from himself. And then the friends are basically saying, don't say that at all. Rather than actually mourn the death of your family, actually mourn the losses that you've experienced in life. Instead, just pray in God and everything will be good. So Job is kind of acting against that, saying, nope, this has been devastating for me. Of course I'm going to cry out in despair. As he says in Job 6, verse 5, does a wild donkey bray when it has grass, or an ox bellow when it has fodder? So he's saying, I don't have what I need to live. Of course, I'm going to be somewhat anxious. So what we're going to start into today, and we'll see how far we get, we'll be looking at the second half of chapter 6, which is directed directly at the friends, rather than kind of not necessarily a backhand route, but a circuitous route in the first half of the chapter. Now Job is going to speak directly against the friends and really speak his mind about this. As we transition into chapter 7, then that Job redirects himself from the friends to God. But for right now, we're talking to the friends and seeing how poor their comfort really is. Rather than deal with the whole of the speech, because there are a number of different points, we'll just be looking specifically right now at verses 14 to 23. And that will give us, actually, no. First, let's actually look just at 14 to 20. Because Job uses a couple different metaphors in there, and we'll just be looking at the metaphors for a little bit. So Job 14 to 20. Would anybody like to read it?
I can. A despairing man should have the devotion of his friends, even though he forsakes the fear of the Almighty. But my brothers are as undependable as intermittent streams, as the streams that overflow, when darkened by thawing ice and swollen with melting snow, but that cease to flow in the dry season, and in the heat vanish from their channels. Caravans turn aside from their routes. They go up into the wasteland and perish. The caravans of Tema look for water. The traveling merchants of Sheba look in hope. They are distressed because they had been confident. They arrive there only to be disappointed.
And before we get into it, I'll make a brief comment. Job 6, verse 14. That is very difficult to translate. I was looking at that a lot. I think it was last week I was trying to do this, or no, 2 weeks ago I was trying to get a better handle on this, because it seems to go, as it seems to say, at least in the NIV and how it translated, that a despairing man should have the devotion of his friends, even though he forsakes the fear of the Almighty. It sounds like the subject of the verse is acting against God, but should still have the wealth of friends, which doesn't seem to be Job's point at all in his speeches. So I say the NIV is a little bit confusing in how it tries to translate this. And a better translation of it would be, especially when you try to put it in context of what Job is saying throughout his speech here. I think it's better to say, he who withholds kindness from a friend forsakes the fear of the Almighty. So therefore, so the whole verse in and of itself is, those who do not follow the law forsake their faith. So if you're not acting in kindness towards your friend, then you're basically saying, I don't want the love of this friend, I don't want the love of God. And understood this way is kind of as the ESV is translating it, it echoes about a third of the book of 1 John in the New Testament. So I think this is a little bit of a better understanding of the verse as well. But, yeah. Other than that, intermittent streams. So in verse 15, but my brothers are as undependable as intermittent streams, as the streams that overflow when darkened with thawing ice and swollen with melting snow, for that cease to flow in the dry season and their heat vanish from their channels. So this is a bit of a foreign concept to us, especially here in Canada, exactly what this means. I'm not, if you remember, you may or may not, it's kind of went by a while ago. So for a sermon, I had this picture up. And this is a picture I took in Israel. So this is further south in the Negev desert. And this is what you would call a wadi. Wadis are basically intermittent streams, if you will. Israel being a very dry place, and the Negev desert in particular being a desert, there's not much water. But during the winter season, or also a little bit of the fall and spring, but mostly just the winter season, you have some rains. And those rains, they come down hard. All the water saturates the soil, and the soil is, according to one of the professor that I had, who was a bit more familiar with the archaeology and geography of the Holy Land than I am, he was saying that the soil is very particular in how it absorbs rain, so it will be saturated very fast by water. At that point, since it's completely saturated, it won't absorb any more water, so any more rain that comes onto it after that will just flow right off. And when the rain flows right off, it needs to go somewhere. So water being water, it will flow downhill. That's one of the first rules of engineering that they teach you, is that water flows downhill. Also, you can't push a rope. But
until you freeze it.
Yeah. So yeah, water flows downhill, and it'll eventually come into some of these channels. So the lowest points in the land, it will flow down there, and it will keep flowing. So as Job kind of mentions, the darkened with thawing ice and swollen with melting snow, he's also talking about the spring thaws. So you can kind of see in the background here hills or mountains, depending on your outlook, I suppose. Some of the ones higher up, especially before the world started warming up in and of itself, there would be a bit more snow on some of the taller mountains. So as you get the spring thaw, a lot more water is coming downhill, a lot more flowing into the streams in addition to the rainfall. So it's also going to be rather dirty, which is what Job is talking about. And this can be extremely sudden, and it will only be for a certain time. So I took this picture in summer, so there's no water at all in there. You can sort of see some of the shrubbery around here kind of just holding on, but yeah, it's practically dead. If you look real close, I don't know if you can see it, but you can see a bit more greenery in the actual stream or channel itself. But yeah, wadis they're channels in the desert. They're usually dry except in rainstorms, or as Job is hinting at, the spring thaw. And these are very sudden and they don't last long. That particular wadi will basically be full for the rainstorms, but even in the winter season, it won't be full at all. It'll just only be full when there's rain. It'll suddenly just flow down and go into the Dead Sea, that particular one. And then it will disappear and just be an empty channel again. So when Job is using this to describe the friends, he's saying that basically they are fair weather friends who have come out of the blue, and then they just lecture Job. So there's not much comfort in them. You could also, and I believe it also comes up later in the book of Job where it's, I can't remember exactly where. One of the later chapters, chapter 24. Job will mention these things and he will basically be, I think it's 24. Yeah, when Job's revisiting this, he will say that there will be a great sound accompanying the intermittent streams, and that's because they are very fast. So like a thunder, these waters will just flow right through the land because, well, there's nothing to really stop them. And they can do a great amount of harm. So Job is understanding the friends to be this really fast, really harmful force that is coming at him only when it is convenient for them. Where they were before this time, who knows? But right now, they've come out of the blue. They've lectured him, and Job is not very appreciative of this. Now, this is in contrast to his second metaphor with caravans. So this is verses 18 to 20. Caravans turn aside from their routes. They go up into the wasteland and perish. The caravans of Tema look for water. The traveling merchants of Sheba look in hope. They are distressed because they had been confident. They arrive there only to be disappointed. So especially at this point in time, when there is no running water or no stable water supplies, there's no assured system of cities which will offer you water as well. When you're in part of a caravan and traveling through the desert, you are basically risking your life. Yeah, because when you travel through the desert, you need springs of water to live. Otherwise, you're just going to be traveling for days and you won't have anything. And from my experience, my very brief experience in the Holy Land, cities and populations, they congregate around water. So if you do not have a spring nearby, they will have certain wells, but even the wells won't be enough, so they'll have cisterns. So if you have a certain amount of area A lot of that will be devoted to a catchment type of project where any rainfall will immediately flow into a cistern, and you'll try and ration that as best as you can. But essentially, all life revolves around water, in especially the more desert portions of Israel. So those who are traveling away from these cities which reserve some water for you, you are taking your life in your hand, because in the desert, water is life. Job is actually comparing himself to the caravans, that he is right now in a desert. He's going through the wasteland. He is very much in danger of perishing, but he needs support for this life. So he's looking around for basically comfort, and he was confident that he would have some, much like these caravans were confident that they would find water. But if they don't, then they are dismayed, and they are possibly dead there and then. So when Job is trying to find comfort and has found none in his friends, he is currently in terrible danger without it, and possibly just dead because of it. He realizes, or we'll get to this a little bit in chapter 7. He realizes that he's close to death. His hope is actually that God would crush him before anything worse would befall him, and maybe cause him to speak against God. But he's realizing that with the friends even there, they're not going to help him or save him from death. So he's in very serious danger. At least emotionally, if not spiritually. Any comments or questions, reflections on metaphors?
Having grown up in the country along French Creek, which is fed by glaciers, I'm very aware of the spring thaw and the summer dry up. It was quite a change between the two of them. So in the summer, there would sort of be a trickle down the middle, and we had a well, so we always had enough water. But in this early spring, it would just flood right over the sides of the creek. It would rechange its path. It would, yeah. It's a good visual.
Yeah.
So he was counting on that support from his friends, and it kind of dried up on him.
A little bit. Also, it's also kind of how you understand the metaphors, because Job doesn't give us a guide. But yeah, if we're looking specifically at the storage of water, then yes, they have dried up. But if we're looking at, say, if you're standing in the middle of a channel, and then you have all this water suddenly come rushing at you from the mountains, then what do?
Well, you either get out or you drown.
Yep. So yeah, he wants them to be more of a spring or a cistern where he has a constant supply of their help. But if they're just being intermittent streams, then they have the very real possibility of crushing and drowning him, or breaking him as they carry him along. Kind of, if you were standing in the middle of the channel, yeah. No, thank you for that. Any other comments? Okay, we'll move on to the ransom. This is verses 21 to 23. Would anyone like to read verses 21 to 23?
Okay. Now you two have proved to be of no help. You see something dreadful and are afraid. Have I ever said, give something on my behalf, pay a ransom for me from your wealth? Deliver me from the hand of the enemy, ransom me from the clutches of the ruthless.
Yeah. So what would happen, or how would you feel if somebody suddenly called you up, just pick up this phone, and then your best friend is calling from, I don't know, because I'm going to make a Simpsons reference, and they were kidnapped in Brazil. So your best friend calls you from Brazil, says they have been kidnapped by the criminals down there, and they now need you to pay a ransom. How would you feel?
First off, I might be suspicious, given, COVID, and who of my friends is traveling in Brazil. So
Yeah. I know. Yeah, that would be the first thought in my mind, but
if you move beyond that, then
I know. Yeah. Let's say you actually knew that this was real.
yeah. I'd want to help them once they're verified.
Oh yeah.
Whether by calling the RCMP and say this is the situation, and how can you reach out to the Brazilian police?
Yeah, but in order to get one of your friends back, would you actually be willing to pay a large ransom for them? Let's say somebody put a bounty of $50,000 on your best friend's head.
If there was a guarantee that the $50,000 would do the trick, yes, easily.
I would have, but now suddenly without $50,000, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to live for the next while, right? So I don't imagine many of us have that kind of just stored up around, or $50,000 being a disposable income type of thing.
Yeah, knowing that I don't have $50,000 to spare, I don't know what I would do. I mean, I'd like to help that person or the friend, but if you don't have the money, I guess you could call up other friends, but I don't.
Line of credit or a GoFundMe page. It's different ways of reaching out to your own friends to say, well, this is what we need.
Yeah, so it's so you'd also consider taking a collection, or because that would be what these pages are, is taking a collection from a whole bunch of people and offering it as a for this purpose. Could also, You can also ask other people to give you money, create some debts for yourself. And yeah, it would be a very big undertaking, which could basically financially cripple you. Or as you might, or as you could phrase it, it's a big ask. So Job, when he's kind of bringing this up, and he's talking to the friends, and the friends are not being helpful to him, they're being disparaging. They seem to be at odds with him, as if he asked them for something incredibly demanding or incredibly crippling to them financially or otherwise. So he's saying, have I ever said, give something on my behalf, pay a ransom for me from your own wealth, deliver me from the hand of the enemy, ransom me from the clutches of the ruthless. So has Job asked them to risk their lives and risk their financial stability, which in those days also meant risking the lives of your family, because if you can't afford food on the table, then your whole family is in jeopardy. Has Job ever made that type of demand for the friends? And the answer is no. Job has not asked for this type of thing. Job has, even though he's fallen into poverty, he's not asked for a ransom so that he could enjoy the wealth that he used to have. Nor has he asked for servants or say, and I hate to say this because I don't think that would be quite characteristic of Job, because I don't think he would actually divorce his wife. But if he wanted to, if his wife left him and he needed to have an heir still for his property, then he could also ask his friends for to supply a daughter for him so that he could continue his family line. I don't think that would be what Job would ask or ever say, but yeah, so Job is not making a huge demand on the friends. So when they're disparaging him for lamenting his situation, he's not understanding why the friends are so at odds with him. His relationship with them is very good, and he's not trying to avoid God in his situation. But he's not trying to seek wealth from anyone except God, because he wants God to be the one who restores him. Because from Job's point of view, his relationship with God is in jeopardy and or has been destroyed, and that is what he hopes to regain. So trying to ask the friends to step in and create a new financial stability or a new worldly stability for Job seems to be out of the question. Rather, what Job wants them to do is he wants them to be friends and give him comfort. So he's not asking them for money or for to give half their property to him or anything crazy like that. He just wants them to give him comfort. Sorry, that's the doorbell. I will be gone for a moment. Please talk amongst yourselves for a minute.
I don't know about this interpretation, whether, if my brother is in a financial problem, yeah, I would, bail him out. But if he comes back 4 or 5 times, then it'd be like Job said, I've never asked you for help before, but now I'm asking. It's a bit of a different situation. He's not been parasiting off them for over and over again. So he's asking maybe just for the first time, saying, now I'm in the depths of my problem. I need support from you, whether it's not necessarily financial, but it's just, you haven't given me support. You've sat with me, but you've not helped me out of my depths. So
Only came in at the tail end of that, but it sounded good.
I was saying it. If my brother comes to me once and asks for financial support, yes. But after the fourth or fifth time, I'd be a bit more hesitant and say, oh, I thought I bailed you out. How did you get back in the hole? And that, so that Job was sort of, I think that Job was saying, well, I've never asked you for help before, but now I'm asking you for help. It's not, in his case, not financial, but just, it's moral or spiritual.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that also kind of points towards the character of the character of the person who's trying to ask. And when you find the person who's repeatedly asking for these things, you know that they are not managing things well. Whereas Job is someone who is of good character. So if he's not repeatedly asking you these things, nor did he ask you for a ransom to begin with, then why would you doubt his character at all? Yeah.
But do you think maybe it's easier for some people to give money out than give emotional support? Because money's fairly cold in the sense that there's no emotional involvement.
No, yeah, I would agree that yes, there are many people who would prefer to give money than time and self. And I will readily admit that I'm not the best at trying to give the latter than financial support when we're talking about mission or anything like that. And I think it's a little bit representative of maybe our culture today, but maybe not, in the sense that I don't know the history of charitable giving throughout and all time. For some of the history of Christianity, it has been somewhat confused. I'll say that, where say like in the Catholic Church, for a long period within the Middle Ages, it was venerable to give alms. So you give alms, and then that allows you to receive grace from God. And then those who receive alms, because they are dependent upon nothing but God, but the grace of God working through their neighbors, they receive grace. And so you basically ingrained a society of indebtedness and begging. And none of that, even though there's a lot of that going on, a lot of it was also cold, because you were doing that not for your neighbor per se, but for your standing with God. So even though the historical position is different in many, many ways, it might be the same as it is today, where a lot more people are willing to give finances than emotional support. And I think one of the difficulties of that is that when you're trying to support someone, it's not going to be a one-time thing usually. And it's going to be an ongoing relationship. And the ongoing relationship can be far more demanding, not necessarily in terms of finances, but in terms of emotional and spiritual giving, than say a one-time thing when you're just giving finances, or even quite regularly giving finances. For example, and yeah, this guy that he'd probably tell you a lot of the same stuff himself, but so I'll give you this little story of a fellow in my vicarage congregation. He will readily admit that he screwed up his life, and he did it big time. A few different types of drugs, was in really bad straits, failed marriage, and now a new remarriage. Dependent on many drugs. Now he's trying to be clean still, but still needs a lot of physical help with that to keep him off these things, off the addictions. And his brain is not what it should be because of all the drugs and alcohol that he's taken. So he will readily admit he screwed up his life. But now, in the past few years, he's come back to his church, and the church was very willing to help him through this, but it's not a one-time thing. So they can help him financially and give him support from time to time, but he also needs a lot of psychological, spiritual help as well, and guidance. And that also fell on the vicar for a little bit. So me and the vicar who came before me, we were the ones who were really helping, or at least trying to help him out or be representatives of the church. The elders were also very excellent when it came to this sort of thing. But yeah, it was, at times it was very demanding, because this person is not stable emotionally and they could dip down, and then you'd have to suddenly, or maybe it wasn't so sudden, maybe they wouldn't contact you for weeks, which is also a sign that there was an issue, but they just didn't want to get you involved. But yeah, suddenly you would find yourself in a big dip within their lives, and then you'd have to give them a lot of emotional and spiritual support at that point in time. And it can be very demanding, very sudden, and kind of awkward. Whereas if you have financial stability, like, oh, well, I just had the sun expense, that's okay, I can plan around this. And there's no necessarily emotional involvement. So yeah, it can be far more demanding to have one support over the other. But I digress. Any other thoughts on this before we move on? Okay. Let's look at verses 24 to 30. Is there anyone who would like to read that?
Teach me, and I will be quiet. Show me where I have been wrong. How painful are honest words. But what do your arguments prove? Do you mean to correct what I say and treat the words of a despairing man as wind? You would even cast lots for the fatherless and barter away your friend. But now be so kind as to look at me. Would I lie to your face? Relent. Do not be unjust. Reconsider, for my integrity is at stake. Is there any wickedness on my lips? Can my mouth not discern malice?
Okay. Any initial thoughts or comments?
He's kind of putting it to them, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, you'll find Job being quite confrontational at certain points in times during his speeches.
Partly confrontational, but partly saying it out straight, not beating around the bush for sure.
Mm. So let's go through this a little bit. Say verses 24 and 25. Teach me and I will be quiet. Show me where I've been wrong. All painful or honest words, but what do your arguments prove? So would you say that Job's statements so far, at least, in what we've covered, say chapter 3, so far in chapter 6, would you say that they are true? Or even his couple comments in chapters 1 and 2, include those as well. Has what Job said been true?
A few people are muted, so you won't get answers from them, but
Well, let's see if they have something to say. I trust that they will unmute themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's speaking the truth, and he seems to be open to, he says, teach me and I'll listen, but he's not interested in arguments or condemnation.
Yeah. So the friends are, I believe that they're just kind of wary of how Job is saying what he's saying. Well, I think it also kind of came up in some of our conversations, especially circling chapter 3, where Job's saying something like, let's say chapter 3, verse 23. Why is life given to a man whose way is hidden, whom God has hedged in? So he's asking kind of a general why question. Is the why question, is it true or false? Or is true or false even the right question to ask about this?
Maybe not the right question. I mean, it's a question. He's questioning it.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on?
Yeah. And that's kind of the heart of the matter, is that if Job had been saying something like out and out wrong, if he was just trying to spout facts, like if he's trying to say God is evil, something very concrete like that, then you could say, no, that's false, or you can even try and argue that is true. But if Job is just trying to give expression to what he's feeling, then how can that be false per se? Yeah. So yeah, even going to somebody who is going through grief or a sense of loss, maybe somebody in the hospital room going through physical turmoil leading towards death, or maybe somebody who's experienced a lot of psychological loss, maybe they've lost a child, and they're saying a whole bunch of things that make you feel uncomfortable. What they're saying may not actually be, what they're saying that makes you uncomfortable may not be easily identified in terms of true false statements. Rather, the idea is more, it is an authentic expression of what they are experiencing.
Does his statement, teach me and I'll be quiet, is it saying, give me the answer to my questions and I'll listen?
Possibly. I wasn't really thinking about it in those terms, but yeah, it really depends on kind of Job's disposition, because you could say, he could just be being confrontational and kind of saying, well, if you could teach me, then do it. Or he could go the other route where he's actually, I want answers, please give them to me.
I think oftentimes when you're in pain, you want answers. Even if some of those answers are hard to deal with, you still want answers, explanations.
Mm. No, absolutely. And kind of in that vein, would giving a rational explanation completely resolve the suffering and turmoil?
I don't think you can give a complete answer to the questions he's asking. It's just not possible.
Mm, mm. Yeah.
No, but if they gave what they thought was the best explanation they can, because it says, have I ever asked for something? Have you ever, you see something dreadful and you're afraid, and I haven't asked for anything in response to that. I just want your listening.
Mm.
That if they tried to honestly say how they saw it or show some kind of empathy with their words, I don't think Job would be so hard on them. But it's sort of like saying, oh, things will get better, or, you know, it's, these things happen. Like, I don't think he wants pity. He doesn't want, I'm trying to think of the word. He doesn't want symbolic sympathy. He wants some real empathy.
Mm.
He doesn't want someone to just say the right words to him.
Yeah.
He wants someone to actually think about what he's going through and empathize with him.
Yeah.
He doesn't want placations, that's the word.
Okay. Yeah. I think we could also say he doesn't want a lecturer or a professor or something like that. He wants a friend.
Yeah.
An actual friend.
So someone who doesn't know him as well would try to placate him and say, oh, things will get better. Well, it's not so bad, or your wounds will heal. He wants someone to actually see and hear and feel for him.
Yeah. So to enter into his he wants somebody to enter into his situation, to be with him there, rather than point to the grand resolution of the problem, rather than dismissing the problem. He wants somebody to deal with it.
Yeah, he doesn't want someone to just say the obvious.
Yeah.
Oh, you've had a lot of problems, Job. Well, that's too bad.
Yeah. I'm trying to, there's two things going in my head. I'm trying to figure out which one to tackle first. Let's keep going in this particular direction. So we have the friends, the Hebrew word is probably better translated as neighbor. So he has neighbors. He has somebody who he is put into relation with by virtue of the law and vocation. So you have neighbors to whom mercy can be shown and from whom mercy can be given. Kind of on the lines of the Good Samaritan, where Jesus is saying, well, who is the neighbor to the man who is beaten upon the road? Well, the answer is to the one who showed him mercy. So the neighbors are around you. So the life as Bildad and so far, they are neighbors to whom mercy can be shown. They are neighbors from whom you can receive mercy. But are they actually comforters? They are in relation to you. You have a relationship with them, but are they actually giving any comfort?
And
Sorry, go ahead.
to be fair, maybe they don't know how.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's at the heart of the issue. Is that they want to do these things, but they have absolutely no idea how to do it. And I would argue that that is primarily because they don't fully understand God. Because when they're trying to give comfort through their speeches, they're not actually giving comfort because they have a very particular view of how things should work. And that view is just not representative of what's actually going on. So Job can't see any comfort in, say, the logical reconstruction of reality so that he can be given an answer. But because the answer will end up being wrong that the friends are trying to supply. But the reasoning through the pain and the hurt, that's not helping, especially in relation to the friends who don't understand what's actually going on. So they're misunderstanding God in the sense that they're trying to work God into a scientific model rather than letting God be God, who is himself the comforter. And because they don't have an idea of how God can comfort people, they just have an idea of how God might work within the universe. They overlook the compassion and the comfort, and see that only in terms of prosperity, what God gives to you.
I think also we don't, because we can't fathom the immensity and the unlimitedness of God's comfort. I think these neighbors maybe could identify with some of Job's problems. Maybe they had lost a child themselves. Maybe they had lost some part of the wealth. Maybe they'd had drought and crops had failed. But I don't think they could fathom all of it because they never experienced anything close to it.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, very much in terms of quantity, they can understand it. But I would also like to make a careful distinction with quality of suffering. And I know that sounds a bit of an odd way to phrase it, but the particular nature of the suffering that is at hand will always be unique. Even if you've lost the same person, like say brother and sister both lost their mother. So mother passed away, the brother and sister are both going through mourning, but the situation for each one of them will be different because they each had a different relationship with their mother.
They're also in different relationships too, so they have different sources of comfort.
Yeah. So it's so even though the friends might understand, say, losing a child, they will not have the experience of being father to one of Job's children and losing that specific child. They will have something like it, but they will not have the exact same thing. And yeah, that's just the small distinction I want to introduce into it is that there are a near infinite different ways to experience pain and loss, because we are different and our situations are different. They can be very similar, but they are different.
I think sometimes it's more honest to say, I don't know what you're going through, but I feel for you. So to say up front, you can't possibly know what they're going through. And maybe the thing with Job's neighbors, they go, oh, well, you know, I know what you're going through, and you should just kind of get yourself pulled up and get out of it. And they were making a lot of assumptions, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some of those assumptions will be fairly obvious as we continue, but yeah, hard to say exactly what assumptions they're making now, but they probably are making them. And I think some of it is that a lot of the friends at this particular point in time, actually throughout the book of Job, this is very characteristic of the friends, that they will be approaching this from a very rationalistic point of view, where things can be figured out, that you can put things in relation to one another, that you can have suffering X and be given theology Y, and then answer has been given, therefore suffering should end. But that's not really how the psychological effects of sin and pain actually work.
No.
This is kind of what I wanted to touch on a little bit earlier, whereas even though we can try and give an explanation to certain suffering, that does not necessarily mean that it will satisfy the emotions or the emotional aspect of things, because you can have a rational answer, but you can still repeat and cycle through the emotions time and time and time and time again. Say having the loss of a spouse, like somebody I knew before. They were going through this period of mourning, and I don't have communication with this particular individual right now, but when I was able to talk with them for a while, they were closing in on the second anniversary of having their spouse pass away, and it was almost still as though the pain was, it was still as though it had happened like last week for her, a lot of the time anyways. And she still found it extremely difficult to do the same activities that she would normally do together with her husband. And that's just the nature of the pain, is that every time she entered into these situations, she would have the emotional backlash that would occur with them, and she'd be in mourning again. But she was still Christian. She knew that her husband was with God, that she knew that he would be rising up in the resurrection. And she had all these answers for what will happen, why things happened in the past, and all that. But having those particular answers, although helpful, did not fully satisfy the nature of suffering, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. think it's logic and emotion come from two different sides of your brain.
Feels like it. Yeah. And I think that's also a little bit behind Job's initial objection, where he's talking about teach me and I will be quiet. How painful are honest words, so something true. So what Job has been expressing for a lot of chapter 3, and also right immediately before in here in chapter 6, he's been expressing his emotions very authentically. They're very true and representative of who he is. But true and false, perhaps not the best way to try and evaluate them. That does not mean that Job is acting completely irrationally by any means, because you can just look at the structure of chapter 3, where Job is actually expressing all this emotion, and it's quite nicely segmented into 3 groups with a progression of thought and a clear response to various things historically and theologically. So even though Job is expressing his emotions, he's not devoid of rationality by any means, but he's just choosing the mode of his expression. You can even contrast this with his sayings in chapters 1 and 2, where, although going through a lot of grief after losing children and servants and animals, Job says, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will return. The Lord has given, the Lord has taken away, the name of the Lord be praised. Like, he has quite rationally thought through the situation and understood that all this is up to God, and kind of come up with a satisfactory explanation for it himself, which you can kind of understand as living in relation to God. Even when his wife comes out to him and says, curse God and die, Job says, are you talking like a foolish woman? Why are you talking like a foolish woman? Are we to accept good from God, not evil? And Job is also understanding the rationalist tension within his faith, but after mulling it over for a while, now he's opening the floodgates, and now all the emotions are pouring out. So it's not that he's choosing reason or emotion and just going from one side to the other. It is that both are together, and he's just having different emphases as he's going through his grief. And people who are not in a period of grief, they might be sympathetic to his cause, which is why the friends came. The people who are trying to comfort him just don't understand it, as if it could be understood.
I mean, I guess that's why he says, do you mean to correct what I say and treat the words as a sparing man does win?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because, yeah, the friends are very dismissive of what Job is trying to say. In part because they just don't like it. It's probably somewhat, or at least bordering on the impious for them. So they don't like what he has to say.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that Job is not communicating something extremely meaningful.
Sometimes it's hard to hear the truth.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, and I've been phrasing a lot of this with an authentic expression, as Job is saying these things in his authentic expression. True and false, maybe not the best way to describe it. But if he's properly representing himself with his words, and then the friends just dismiss that, they are saying, or actually they're just invalidating him as a person.
Mm.
Saying that, nope, you can't have grief. This emotion is wrong. Stop having it. Be happy. And if you ever try to say that to somebody at a funeral, that's one of the worst things you could really do, is like, no, why are you crying? You shouldn't be crying at mourning the loss of your loved one. Instead, be happy. And this is also one of the reasons why I do not like the recent movement towards celebrations of life in place of an actual funeral. Because the celebrations of life are trying to basically dismiss the feelings of sadness over the loss and just trying to be as happy as you can in certain of those moments of that of the dead person's life. And while it is good to find happiness within those times of that person, it is not actually mourning if we're only looking at those. It's rather dismissive of grief.
Rather a silent audience, don't you, Pastor?
I was just thinking the celebration of life things, that kind of stems from a lack of belief too, though. I mean, most of those are based on the idea that that person is gone forever. The only thing that's left is what they left behind in this world. There isn't a belief in eternity, and rather than, and there isn't even a belief in death or in hell, or if there is, they don't want to think about it.
Yeah. And if this is also coming from basically an atheistic background, then there's just nothingness. It's like, this person's gone and that's it. So how can you comfort somebody then? And then you just go, well, I'll just try happy memories instead of actually dealing with the loss. And in a way, I suppose that this is somewhat reflective of the situation within the book of Job, where the friends will be trying to point towards worldly prosperity, or at least prosperity in this world as an expression of a proper relationship with God. So they're trying to look at very concrete and worldly realities to substantiate your happiness and your situation in life. But Job, who is in the midst of grief and suffering, finds this, well, how did you phrase it before? Tasteless food eaten without salt, flavor in the white of an egg. Refuse to touch it because such food makes him ill. Yeah, so he does not find trying to live well a proper replacement for a solution to death, or a solution to suffering. So when Job is trying to have this problem resolved, he's trying to go directly to the only one who has the capabilities of resolving the issue. And since he's having difficulties trying to see this individual, trying to see God, he is positing the idea of an intermediary and a redeemer to talk between him and God, so that God can be in a living relationship with Job, or an active and living relationship with Job, delivering Job from what Job considers to be a great injustice done to him. And in fact, it is. So Job is constantly looking for the God who saves, and in particular, the one who brings him to God. So he's trying to find a way out of the world which has failed him. And truly, the world has failed him, because it was what caused the death of, or it was what contained the death of his family, servants, and animals. So he's trying to find something greater than this. He's trying to find the source of life, the source of hope. And since the friends aren't actually directing him to this, and they're very dismissive of their needing to be hope, in a sense, because they're saying, well, all you need to do is perform these actions, and then you have it. They're not seeing the greater issue nor the need of faith. Yes, I tied that back to celebrations of life, with the celebrations of life being just a look at the worldly, a look at the immediate, rather than trying to go beyond, trying to actually seek salvation and a true resolution for suffering, which we have in the person of Jesus Christ, who actually shows us the hope and promises of God.
Do you think that Job's friends or neighbors are just kind of doing lip service to God? That they're doing the right things, that they're doing what looks good to others? Or do they really think about what God does for them?
I don't think they're viewing it as something, something economic, in a sense that they put in such and such good deeds and out of it comes such and such good fortune.
No, I don't mean it that way.
Yeah, I know you don't. So they're not.
Are they
You'll find throughout. Sorry?
Are they emotionally connected to God? Or is it just, I do the right things, God does what he does, I do what I do? No, we're even.
No, and that's what I meant by kind of the economic relationship type of deal.
Okay, I didn't understand that part.
So yeah, this is kind of, you walk up to the counter at a fast food place, you order, I don't know, a Big Mac, you receive the Big Mac, you pay your money, and then you're out. And I didn't even mention the cashier. I just mentioned in terms of transactions. So if you're viewing things kind of economically, you can view it completely in terms of transactions rather than people and their interactions. I don't think that is exactly how the friends are viewing things. Because you see, especially within some of the earlier speeches that they have, that they are making some very deliberate concessions. With Eliphaz's speech back in chapters 4 and 5, he was talking about how man is born to trouble, and there will be a whole bunch of stuff that is visited upon him, but God will save him from things. So Eliphaz does have a trust that God will save his people, and that it's not purely that you will go this life without suffering, but he does have a hope that, an assurance that God will save his people. Uh, Bildad will mention forgiveness of sin, or God forgetting sins. So Bildad has a trust in the Lord that he will not treat us exactly how we deserve, but that the Lord is forgiving, and that he has forgiven Job. Zophar, I need to read his speeches again to get an exact remembrance of what he's saying. But yeah, I don't think the friends are living apart from faith. They are the ones who are overlooking certain things, and they're not, they certainly don't have, say, a particular emotional connection. I certainly have a rational connection, and part of faith is very much a rational component. Like, the principles that Jesus died on the cross, he died for me, he saved me by his blood. You have those logical premises, which you also work into conclusions, which is made for you. And faith also does have some emotional components to it as well, but you can't really describe faith in terms of, I mean, like, you can't say faith is rational or faith is emotional, or at least not purely, because faith is, and to understand this in a very Christian and New Testament sense, rather than kind of how it's presented in the book of Job, it is dependent upon the Holy Spirit working within you and drawing you to God. So faith is absolutely dependent upon God actively working within you, working for you, and basically having you live in him. So faith is not an object that you possess, or even an object in the philosophical sense, where an idea can be an object. But faith is a participation in God.
Do you think the friend's faith is maybe more childlike? It hasn't been tested. It's a little bit more immature. It's really easy to say and believe God's going to rescue you. It's a little harder to be in a trial and know that God is walking beside you, but not necessarily removing the trial from you.
And I think that's a good way to try and address it, so that it is a bit more, how we might call it, a bit more childlike. I think with the friends, they are trying to understand it within their own terms. So it's, although more knowledge, more experience, like Job has experience now, given his suffering, an experience of suffering, which is informing his faith. The friends don't seem to have their faith as well informed, so they are trying to, on their own, inform their faith.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is right, Linda. It's like an acquaintance or a friend. You know both people, but with an acquaintance, there's not that same emotional connection as there is with a friend. And that's kind of what I was saying about Job's neighbors as opposed to Job. That his neighbors, I don't want to say superficial believers, but have a different relationship. Like Job has a very personal relationship with God. Mm-hmm. But I don't see his friends of having that same personal relationship. I have sense that they have that knowledgeable relationship with God, but not that personal connection.
No, I agree. I agree.
And I think Christians can be like that too. You know, they can their whole lives be Christians and consider themselves Christians, but they don't have that personal connection. And everyone's different. I'm not criticizing or judging or saying one way is better than the other way, because
Yeah.
it's each has their own relationship with God.
Yeah. Kind of going back to the idea of faith as a mustard seed. If you have faith, you're saved. It could be as small as a mustard seed or as big as a mountain, but you're saved by faith.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the discussion this morning. This has been great. Now I'm trying to think of a good psalm to have alongside this, and one's not. Oh, maybe that one. Oh no, maybe not. One's not springing to mind quite readily. Yeah. I will. Okay, I think we'll. I think I'll go with Psalm 20. For our closing prayer, let's pray Psalm 20, and then I'll mention something else right after we pray. So, let us pray. May the Lord answer you when you are in distress. May the name of the God of Jacob protect you. May he send you help from the sanctuary and grant you support from Zion. May he remember all your sacrifices and accept your burnt offerings. May he give you the desire of your heart and make all your plans succeed. We will shout for joy when you are victorious and will lift up our banners in the name of our God. May the Lord grant all your requests. Now I know that the Lord saves his anointed. He answers him from his holy heaven with the saving power of his right hand. Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. They are brought to their knees and fall, but we rise up and stand firm. O Lord, save the King. Answer us when we call. O Lord God Almighty, we do pray that you save us when we find ourselves in the pits of despair, the gravity of grief. Please also help us when we find ourselves among unhelpful comforters. For we know that in our grief, our situation is not like anyone else's. Please grant us patience when they do not say what they need to say. And please, Lord, help guide us by your word, that we may find comfort in you. And please, Lord, help all others be guided by your word so that they may understand you and be brought to faith and in a proper living relationship with you, like we ask you to bring us into a proper living faith with you. Lord, help us not to treat our faith superficially, or help us only view you rationally or emotionally. Lord, help us participate in you. In the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord, who through faith gives us eternal life, we pray. Amen.
Amen.